excited to do this again. We always have fun.
Yeah.
Uh, it was fun to be on your podcast. It's fun to have you on our little webinar here. Not quite as big as Disruptors, but we're cool too. We're cool too.
It's all
Uh,
good.
I'm excited to talk to you because I think that the market has been disrupted a ton this year specifically with a lot of wholesaling laws that are changing. We've got commission structure stuff changing. So I'm excited to dig into what's working. I think that's the big question on everyone's mind now is like, how the heck do we navigate this? How do we win? And I like to start with the beginning of the funnel, which is sales and marketing first, and
Hmm.
then dig into operations and what operations are working. So
Yeah.
you are the king of the sales funnel, so I wanna dive in and hear what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely appreciate it. And we'll go through like I the way I planned this was that, like 30 minutes kind of sharing some stuff as far as sell side, and then the other 30 minutes we'll just do a Q&A and talk about, anything goes, right? And then if you guys will stay all the way to the end, I do have something cool I'm giving away, so don't leave before it ends.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
know that.
yeah, so basically, the way we're gonna win today is really the way we always win, right? Sales is timeless. Sales will never go away. Well, I take that back. Maybe when AI has figured out how to replace all of us, but until AI replaces all of us, sales is never going to go away. And so I think the big thing is that what I'm seeing as the best operators, they've got the best sales teams, right? And they have the ability to connect and build trust with homeowners better than anybody else. And by doing that, they're able to provide the best solution because wholesale has been great. It's been great for a lot of us for a very, very long time, but wholesale is not the only solution today. And so if you can't connect and build trust, then why would they go with you? Right. And so I really, really like to focus on the sell side. And so what I want to talk about is sales is not how we kind of see it on TV or in the movies. There's Jordan Belfort and with Wall Street, there's Boiler Room, classic, Glengarry Glen Ross. If you guys haven't watched that, like definitely check that out. Coffees for Closers, that's where it came from. But that's not what sales is. That is just some prehistoric sales process. And if you think about it, like most of what everyone knows about sales today was created before the internet was invented, before we had Google at our fingertips. So before, if you wanted to learn about a product, if I want to learn about Left Main, which obviously can't exist without internet, but if I wanted to learn about Left Main pre-internet, I'd have to talk to a salesperson. That was the only way I was going to get that information, right? And so that salesperson can use me and abuse me and whatever, and I just had to put up with it. That's the way sales was before. Today, man, everyone knows everything about you before you even show up. They've Googled your company, right? If they filled out a web form, they're going to Google your company before you even show up. So we're living in a very, very, very different age today. So we can't bully people the way that some of these sales trainers still teach today, which is mind boggling. And the other thing too is sales is very different for us than it is in other industries or than, some industries. The guys that come from the car sales world, they can get away with some of these tactics because the moment you drive the car off the lot, it's not refundable. In real estate, we got to keep them sold today, tomorrow, next week, next month, and maybe even more months if we're doing some of these other, creative strategies. You can't bully someone and expect them to be on board with you in 3 months, right? So you got to also look at who you're learning the sales information from. And so why do I feel like I'm qualified to talk about sales? Well, I was an engineer. And if you think about like your circle of friends, how many were engineers that you thought, man, like that guy's just a natural salesperson, right? Have you ever zero, right?
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. And so I was an engineer. I'm a person that's like let me think about it. Let me pull my data and I'll make the best decision for me. And I thought that everyone bought this way, but they clearly don't. And so when I first was selling, I would say, all right, Stephanie, what are you looking for at home? Well, I want a 3-bed, 2-bath in Charlotte in a good school district for less than $180,000. And then I would show you, and this is like 2007, right? Not today. I would show you every single one of these houses, and I would look at you. Well, Stephanie, which one do you want? And I don't know, right? So people don't buy based off of information. People buy based off of feelings, which is not my strength. And so I had to reverse engineer every little thing about sales until I could actually do it effectively without losing the sale. Right. And so that's the reason why I feel qualified to talk about it. And, if you don't want to follow if you don't want to follow a sales process and you want to wing it, here are some things that might happen. The worst of all is having that DocuSign envelope that's been open and viewed, right? Like DocuSign sends it to you, like almost mocking you. And it's the last interaction you have with that homeowner. And then the worst thing is you get an email from another wholesaler and you see that property and like, what the heck, right? And so these are the kinds of things that will happen if you're above playing the game, if you refuse to play the game. So I'm going to share a process that we use. You're going to get a lot more no's. That's what's going to happen. But you're also going to get a lot more yeses. The worst case scenario at an appointment is not a no. The worst case in an appointment is let me think about it.
Yeah.
Right? That's the worst case. So you're going to get more no's, but as a result of getting more no's, you're also going to get more yeses, which is, at the end of the day, what leads to us getting paid, right? So
real quick, before you dive into that, I just want to point out that I think that knowing thyself is a really important part of learning how to sell and then learning how to manage, a sales team. That classic, you buy the way you sell, right? You sell the way you buy. I mean, that's very similar. Like, I don't need as much information. I'm very impatient. Like, if I'm gonna it's been a couple years since I bought a TV with my husband, but like, I don't want to go look at 1,000 different TVs. All right. So my TV is at the space and show me a good picture. Don't like battle me with all these different options. And this one has, I'd rather die. And I think while I want some detail, I don't want a ton of detail. So if I just went that way and sold the way that I buy, I may miss some details here in the way too that that people may need, right, along the way. So I think
a more analytical person might be offended that you didn't care about what they wanted.
Right, I'm rushing them, right? So I think it's important to know that and then adjust, right?
Yeah, and it's true in sales. It's also true in leadership. Right? I learned this in sales, but then I failed this in the leadership side, where I was always trying to lead people how I want to be led, which is like, just tell me what the mission is, Stephanie, and I'll figure out the rest.
Yeah,
that is not how people want to be led. People want to know, like, all right, what are we doing? Why is this important? What does success look like? How will we know we're doing a good job? What is the consequence if we don't do a good job, if we fail in accomplishing this mission? Right? People want to know all these things, which is important. But like, for me, it's like, that's all in my head. It's good enough. You guys don't need to know. It's just, here's the mission. And then they finish the mission and it's an abysmal failure because I didn't tell them exactly what success looks like. So anyway, it's kind of actually leads to our next step. So like, have you guys ever played Battleship? So growing up, right, we played Battleship and you got, board on this side, board on our side. And, you say the coordinates and hopefully you hit the ship on the other side. Well, if you had a mirror on the other side, should you win that game day in, day out?
Yeah.
You should, right? And so for us, we want to ask questions in such a way where they're basically revealing to us their side of the board on Battleship. So then when we present our offer, again, whether it's cash, wholesale, installment, novation, creative, or listing with a realtor, we're nailing it with that offer. Right? If we make an offer and it checks all their boxes, guess who feels seen, validated, and understood? Or look at it another way. If you guys were able to play poker, right, and the person you're playing poker with on the other side, on every single hand, held their cards up. On every hand, should you win at that table? I hope so, right? And so, again, we want to ask questions where it feels like we're playing poker against a guy who's got his cards face up. And so how do we do this? Well, we ask, again, I mentioned, and I'll go into greater detail in a moment, but we ask a lot of questions that really clarifies what's going on in their world, that we understand what's keeping them up at night. How did they get themselves into this situation? What does the perfect outcome look like? What are the feelings associated with that perfect outcome? And then, what happens if we can't get them that outcome? And we get them crystal clear on what they want. We help them discover exactly what they want. and then we help them to get that with us buying their house cash. Another thing to look at too is there was an author of Trey Taylor, right? A CEO does three things. And I heard him give this presentation, which was talking about I see you. And what he meant by that is if you can give the other person the feeling that you see them, you've won, right? I see you, I hear you, I understand you, you felt understood, you're gonna get the business. And so the best operators, right? The best teams right now in the country all have a sales floor that can do this. And I know because I work with a lot of them, right? And so the other thing too is there's this guy, I always forget his name, is Everyday Spy. And he was on Tom Bilyeu's podcast. And what he talked about is the number one skill the CIA looks for is the power of perspective. Can you see what the other person sees? Not can you see what's going on? Can you see what the other person sees and understand the world from their perspective? The number one most valuable skill in the CIA.
You want empathetic CIA agents, huh?
Right. Well, for what's the word I'm looking for? For nefarious reasons. But yes, that is the number one skill that the CIA is looking for. But imagine again, like if I'm talking to Stephanie, she's a distressed homeowner, and she feels I can communicate to her that I can see the world from her perspective. Whenever I make my offer, wouldn't she feel like it's the best offer? Because like a doctor, I was able to diagnose exactly what's going on in your world.
Yeah.
If you went to a doctor who could diagnose exactly what's wrong with you, you're not going to question the prescription. When he or she prescribes the medication, you're not going to be like, well, are you sure this is the right one? It's like, no, you understand me through and through. You did the MRI, the x-rays, the blood work, the angiogram, whatever. You've done all that stuff. When you say this is what we need to do, I feel pretty good that you told me what I need to do. I'm going to go do it. And again, that comes through the power of asking the right questions. And so how do we accomplish this, right? We got to get really good at active listening. I almost feel like it's proactive listening. So I've called it active listening, but it feels maybe more like proactive listening, which means that I'm going out of my way to hear you. Right. And so like, growing up, mom used to say, it's not what you said, but how you said it. Right. And it sounds pretty good, but it's actually not fully accurate. It's not what you say. It's not how you said it. It's how it landed. How did they process it? And the best example I can think of to illustrate this, and I might be screwing some of the guys on this call here, or it might be, screwing the guys for all the women that are listening to this, okay? So, Stephanie, maybe we'll throw Zach under the bus here. Okay. Zach wants to go on a guy's trip. Does he ever ask you when you're in a bad mood?
Of course not.
Of course not. What does he do?
Well, it's when I'm very happy. Yeah. In the middle of
Right?
something good.
Yeah, right. You're happy. Maybe he took you out to dinner. Maybe he bought you something nice, right? He's like, hey, Stephanie, some of the guys are talking about maybe doing a guy's trip. We're going to go hog hunting with Eddie Speed down in Dallas, right?
That sounds
whatever.
awesome.
But he's going to time that question. So he's not just going to ask it with no context whatsoever. So we're responsible as salespeople to make sure whatever we say lands correctly. I'll give you another example here. So Stephanie knows my wife, right? So first few years of marriage were kind of rocky. She's a strong personality. I'm a strong personality. But here's the thing. I'm a problem solver. And so when she used to say, I have nothing to wear, I would be like a superhero, go into her closet. I was like, what about this? What about that? Doesn't this work? And she'd say, no, no, no. And after like 2 or 3 years, I finally figured out that it meant I have nothing to wear for this particular event, for this particular time of year, for the particular colors that are the theme for this year. Is that accurate, Stephanie?
I have a lot of wrong pants in my closet. Yeah. Not a lot of right ones. So yeah, it very much depends. It's a landmine. Landmines in there. You gotta have the right
I have
occasion.
the right ones. And then I learned from another event I held recently. One of the females there is like, no, when she says I have nothing to wear, that is code for take me shopping. So I've learned this now as a husband after 17 years. And so why does this happen? Well, our ability to communicate is fairly limited. If you look at our language, right, the words are about 7 bits per second, but the brain can process 40 million bits per second. So 40 million and 7. So when I say something to Stephanie, she's processing it through her eyes, her ears, right? She can sense how I'm presenting this, right? So even though the words are coming out of my mouth, my eyebrows, my hands, if they're doing something weird, my shoulder, how fast I said it, how loud I said it, it all comes to effect, right? So the words come out of my mouth. That's one filter because I'm going to be imprecise with my words. That's just the way it is. That's just the way the human body works. We're imprecise with our words. You're going to filter it through your eyes and ears. And then when you speak back to me, you're going to have your own filter with the words that come out of your mouth. And then I'm going to observe it with my eyes and ears. So there's 4 filters in a way. And so the reason why communication is so shoddy is because it's just an imperfect mechanism for communicating. So I make the argument that everyone is on a spectrum from being absolutely horrendous at communicating to just bad. That's where our range is. Like there's nobody that's actually an excellent communicator, right? As a matter of fact, I saw Stephanie a few weeks ago in Vegas at WealthCon. We just happened to bump into each other at the airport, right? And you asked me, hey, Steve, what are you speaking on? And I said, communicating. And what happened? 2 of my team members started laughing because they know I'm not the best communicator, right? So we're all pretty bad. It's just like, how less bad are you than everyone else? And so Billy Ross is a good friend of mine, and he taught me the platinum rule. So golden rule, we grew up in elementary school. It's not what you say. It's the golden rule. Treat other people how you want to be treated, which is a pretty good rule. Pretty good rule. You could do a lot of good with this rule because I think we've forgotten this rule as a society, unfortunately. However, in sales, we have a greater responsibility is to treat others how they want to be treated. So Stephanie's in Charlotte. I'm going to go visit her, right? We're going to hang out. And she's like, Steve, make sure you bring over some dessert, right? I said, great. And I'm just going to bring over my favorite dessert. Does Stephanie feel like I care about her, right? Or should I say, hey, Stephanie, what's your favorite dessert? And then you tell me, and I go pick that up. Now I'm selling Stephanie the way Stephanie wants to be sold, or treating her the way she wants to be treated. I hope that makes sense to everybody, right? But that's the difference. And again, if we're selling somebody, this is what we need to do. We need to figure out what they want so we can give them that.
I think that just to add to that, I think people want the ability to be heard too. Yes, we need to be good listeners, but sometimes we just need to let people talk in order to establish that rapport and that trust. I'll use the doctor example. Let's say you walk into the doctor's office and they ask you 2 questions and give you a diagnosis, right? Are you going to question that prescription? Yeah, because you're going to be like, they didn't freaking pay attention to me. I came in and spent 5 minutes. That was it. Like, in and out. And then I'm on. It was very transactional. No one likes no one likes that, even if it was correct, right? And maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I would argue that it's less likely to be correct. But what if it was, and you just had terrible bedside manner, right? You still walk away feeling bad. You not trust. But if you've given someone an opportunity to tell you what's wrong, even if you know what the answer should be, then now they trust you more because they felt heard. I think a lot of listening is allowing someone to talk to.
Absolutely right. And it's hard for us if we're in sales because we want to talk over people generally if you're in sales.
You want to jump to the solution, want to fix the problem, right?
Right away.
Right. It's not about the nail, right? Have you seen that video?
Yeah. It's not about the nail. Yeah, it's a great video. I've shared that before in my training. I should share it some more. But you got this thing right here.
All my sweaters are snagged.
Yeah. So you guys are wondering about this inside joke, Shauna, if you can maybe help post the YouTube link later on. But it's a classic sales video. Yeah. Or a classic comedy video, but it really applies a lot in sales.
Yeah.
And so, but going, into what Stephanie mentioned is that people want to feel heard. And so one of the ways people feel heard is you have to be really curious. So I call this sad puppy, right? I'm going to come in and be really curious, unsure how I can help you. So like the way you could look at this is in a restaurant, right? I want the server who is extremely confident in the quality of the restaurant, quality of the food. It's going to come out hot. It's going to come out fast. And it's going to taste amazing. That's the server I want. But I also want my server to be uncertain that I got my order right or what I'm in the mood for, right? So we have this, who here has ever been to a restaurant where the server doesn't even write down your order? There's like 8 of you and he doesn't write down the order. None of us like that server, right? The only person that thinks that's cool is that server,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so you don't feel heard, you don't feel listened to because you didn't write it down. So I want you to be super confident in the quality of your services, like you were talking about hot food, fast food, and this, right? I want you to be confident in the quality, but unsure why you're the best option for that homeowner. Help me understand what is going on. Okay, so but why are you selling now? But why are you selling? Why does that have to be now? And why would you sell your house to someone like me? You don't ask those questions specifically, but you should be able to answer those questions within yourself, because if you can answer those questions within yourself, you're going to get the business. But if you can't answer those 3 questions confidently, you're probably not going to get the business, right? So that goes back to what Steph is talking about is listening. And so let's see, I got a few other things. So mirroring. There's 3 different levels to mirroring. The first one is just verbal. If the homeowner says something to you, you could mirror the last 1 to 3 words or the middle 3 words, right? So the classic example is, I can't afford this right now. You might say, right now? And now we're going to have a conversation about the timing of the situation. But they say, I can't afford this right now. And you say, can't afford this? We're now having a conversation about the financial situation, right? So if you want to mirror, you can mirror the last 1 to 3 words or the 3 most significant words in the middle of the sentence. It demonstrates your listening, and they're going to expand upon what they said, right? And it goes back to what Stephanie said a moment ago, demonstrating that you're giving them the opportunity to talk, and you're demonstrating that you're listening. And then we have the physical ones, which is speech rate. If you talk a lot faster than the homeowner, which is more likely the case than the other, you're going to give them a sense of, this guy is trying to rip me off or something along those lines, right? But if you talk a lot slower than the homeowner, they might think, how can you possibly help me? And I think the best way to look at this is, if you take a New Yorker and you put him in Mississippi and he's trying to buy houses, every homeowner is going to think, this guy's trying to rip me off. If you take a guy from Mississippi and start buying houses in New York, they're going to walk all over that guy because they're not speaking at the same speed. You got to match speech volume. If you're talking to a quiet person, you're going to have to talk a little quieter. But if you're talking to an excited person, you're going to talk a little bit louder. Now, in my experience, we don't talk to a lot of loud homeowners, but we do talk to a lot of quiet homeowners because they're older, right? And then we want to match gestures. So for those of you guys doing face-to-face, that's my preferred style. But if you're meeting them face-to-face, you want to match their gestures, right? If they have bigger gestures, you got to have bigger gestures. But if they're pretty quiet or their gestures aren't so much, don't move your body as much. It's a little bit tougher, but that's something you have to be conscious of. And then body language. If they're crossing their arms, you cross your arms. If they're crossing their legs, you cross your legs. If they're leaning back, you lean back. And then the way to test whether you got rapport or not is you can scratch your head, put your hand on your chin, and if they mirror you, now you know you've got rapport. Does that make sense?
I think especially the first 2 are very doable to doing on the phone as well, or having a virtual call. How would you replicate body language on the phone? Would that be maybe the spacing in between, like the pauses that you're noticing the homeowner have? How would you get that kind of 3rd level virtually?
So you can't necessarily mirror body language, which is why I don't like to buy over the phone. I mean, we obviously do, but I prefer not to. You can't measure body language, but what you can do is when you're saying things, like if being, like if I were to whisper something, because there's some things we'll say that we'll kind of like lean in if we're talking to somebody and
Right.
we're going to say a little softer, like, well, Stephanie, like off the record, what were we hoping to get? I would still lean forward while I'm on the phone, even though they can't see it, it's still going to come out over the phone like you're leaning into it.
Yeah. Same thing when they say like people can hear you smiling, right?
Right. Smile and dial. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then a third way to mirror is energetically. And so I'll ask you guys, right? So I see 13 attendees. Um, the last time, right? I'm looking at the guys here. Let's look at the breakdown of people on the call here. So it looks like we have a pretty even split. More guys than girls, but pretty even split. So for all the guys, right? The last time you were talking to your female companion, your life partner, and she was a little irritated, well, really irritated with you, and you said, "Hey, Stephanie, can you just calm down?"
Oh, Steve, I love it when my husband says that.
What happens? It just
Like,
skyrockets, right?
yes.
You just sent her to the moon. Likewise, for the ladies,
Well,
has
with
this
men,
ever?
come on. Yeah, it's the same with men. If I ever tell my husband, all right, you need to calm down. No,
Mhm.
not go well either.
It's not going to work with him.
No.
Shao actually said that to me while we were in Mexico. It's like, hey, like you just need to like just breathe and just slow down. I was like, you're right. I am kind of getting out of out of hand with this. I was
Mhm.
really upset with the manager at the hotel. Anyway, but yeah, for like the women, has there ever been a time where your male counterpart told you to calm down and it worked? My guess is no, because I've been teaching this for 5 years and I've yet to find the couple that this actually worked. Right? Every time I see someone raise their hand, and they always do it kind of laughingly with their female counterpart there, and you get like a shoulder slap, right? Like this doesn't work. So why doesn't this work? You got the female over here at their higher energy level. You got the guy over here, and when he says calm down, he never says like, hey, can you calm down? It's always like, hey, can you just calm down? It's like greater energy shift, and that's what sends them off, right? So you got to match them energetically. Now, I'm not suggesting that if they're angry with you, you get angry back with them, but you can bring more energy into the conversation, right? They want to be acknowledged that something bad is going on. So if there is a delay with the lender or the title company or whatever, and like they're pissed off, hey, this title company sucks. They're unresponsive, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go in. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm pretty irritated with this too. I think I'm going to fire them after this transaction. I've told them over and over again to do this the right way, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, no, I mean, no, it's not that bad, right? And they'll kind of bring it down a notch. So that's what we want to do as far as managing them energetically. Other things we want to do is we want to ask a lot of what and how questions. These are open-ended questions. Another one, not shared as much, as a who question. Like who is an open-ended question, but we don't really talk about that as much. But what and how questions get you to the truth faster, right? So I'll give you an example. My kids, they're 13, 11 now, but when they were in first and second grade, they had a piano recital, and they're loud and rambunctious, too loud for everyone else that's playing the piano. Not my kids. My kids are well behaved, but all the other kids. And so one of the other parent helpers says, hey, let's play a game. All the kids quiet down. And she says, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100, right? And she says, and she lets them ask the questions. And one of the kids, right, is it more or less than 30? It's like, oh, that's an interesting question. But they're first graders, second graders, like, that's fine, whatever. Just a little judgment on my part. But my oldest daughter asks, what's the tens digit? You can see what's the tens digit, what's the singles digit. In 2 questions, you've got the number. Versus what I would do, is it more or less than 50? Okay, is it more or less than 75? Right? It's a lot more questions if you ask a closed-ended question. So we like to ask open-ended questions, what and how questions. And then the last thing I'll wrap it up here is we don't generally like to ask why questions unless it's a question that actually helps us. So for example, why are you selling your property? Why would you sell your house to me? Why would you ever take less than full market value? You hear these questions when they defend it, it's to our benefit. What are some other why questions that don't work to our benefit? Why don't you go with the realtor? Why don't you go with the other guy? Why don't you fix it up yourself? If they have to defend that, that's not to our benefit. So we don't want to ask why questions generally, unless we know for sure that why question will actually benefit us. And the reason why that is growing up, every time we got asked a why question, it was fairly accusatory. Stephanie, why is your homework not done? Why is your room a mess? Why are all the lights on in the house? Right? Why did you leave all the dishes out again? Why is the AC so low? Whatever. It was always accusatory. It was never, Stephanie, why did God bless me with such an amazing child? Stephanie, why do I love you so much? Right? Your parents didn't say these things. Again, I've been doing this for many years. I've had like 2 people say that their parents were like, ask them those questions. Like, man, like it must be nice to grow up in an emotionally healthy environment, because that's not what I had. Right? So instead of asking a why question, we like to ask how come, or what happened. This happened for a reason. So I'll share another thing. This is not a sales thing. This is a parenting thing or a marriage thing. When my daughters cry, I'm trying to not be the father that my dad was to me. Because if I was crying, is why are you crying? Stop crying. My daughters cry, I'll ask them, hey, what's going on? How come you're crying? And now we've created psychological safety that they don't have to feel a need to defend themselves. And we can have an open conversation. Or another one is if my wife comes home, or when I come home from the office and my wife says it's been an overwhelming day. And I say, oh, why was it overwhelming? She feels subconsciously attacked. And now she's going to tell me how my kids suck, how I'm not taking care of my end of the bargain, and all these things. So she has to defend why she feels overwhelmed. Instead, I said, well, what happened today that made you feel overwhelmed? We've created psychological safety, and she can speak on it with a free mind where she doesn't feel judged in anything they say, right? They say, well, the kids were difficult, had a rough day at work, I had this conversation with my mom, whatever it is. But now she doesn't feel judged, and it's not a defensive conversation. So in a sales appointment, I'm not going to ask them why questions unless it's a question that when they defend it is actually to my benefit. So I'm going to open up to Q&A, and we'll talk about like how all this applies to today's environment. But before I do that, I want to share with you guys, I'm giving something away. So I actually have a book on Amazon. It's Active Listening 2.0. We're going to rename it at some point in the near future. But for now, it's still Active Listening 2.0. It's like 20 something bucks or something like that, but we're giving it for free. So we got that. We got the book. We got the top 5 objection handlers. My script on how to run an appointment. Our call review listening tool that we use internally. There's like 3 pages. I had someone ask me, like, hey, Steve, like when you're listening to call reviews, like, what do you listen for? It's like, that's a good question. So I wrote them all out. It's 3 pages of stuff I'm listening for in a call review. I got a 2-hour recording of me at a live event, and anyone that does this, if you guys want someone to review your sales process, someone on my team can review the sales process with you. So if you guys want that, text script, SCRIPT, to number 33777. So script 33777. So with that, any questions? We can even go longer if you guys want. I got plenty of time for all you guys.
Yeah. So what was that? 33377?
33777. I'll type that here.
All right, type it in. Yeah. That's interesting. And that's really generous of you. Thank you for doing that for everybody. The why, I don't know that I've ever really heard that, that you shouldn't ask why questions. That's really interesting. I can see the psychological effects on doing that.
Yeah.
I've always asked why now.
Why now is good because
Yeah.
they're defending why now is to our benefit.
Right. But even that is a little bit agitating. You know what I mean? Well,
Yeah.
why not?
Well, it's
I'm late and you're telling me I'm late. I should have done this forever ago.
Well, it's the tonality. It's like, okay, well, I understand you need to sell, but why do you need to sell now?
Yeah.
Versus like, well, why do you need to sell now? It's the tonality is so key to delivering these questions.
Yeah.
Got a quiet crowd here from the attendees.
what do you do in the offer scenario? So
Um,
I feel like we have a little bit of difference in opinion here, but I'd like to hear kind of your breakdown when you are on an appointment with somebody, they're quiet, you're having a hard time opening them up, and
mhm,
they're kind of staying hard fast in the fact that they want an offer. And they're like, well, I
mhm,
don't really know. I just was hoping to see what you'd pay for the property, and they don't budge from there.
mhm.
Where
Yeah,
how do you handle that?
yeah. So there's a couple different things. Like, well, it seems to me that you're just asking me to just make you an offer. I say,
Yeah,
yeah, okay, all right. So if I was even if I was able to pay you exactly what you wanted, like, what would even happen after that?
well, then
And
I do it.
then let's do it. Okay, great. Well, I had a chance to do some homework before I came over, and cash buyers are paying between 70 and $85,000 for homes nearby. I'm not suggesting that's my offer, but if someone came along and offered you that, what would happen next?
All right, so you go for range.
A range, but it's not my offer, right? It's always some range well below what I'm willing to pay.
Yeah,
So it's a soft offer, right? It's not my offer. So if someone came along and offered you that, what would happen next? And then we begin negotiations.
yeah, got it. Good. That part I agree with. I think that it's important to get to the part where you're talking numbers,
Mhm.
and
Oh,
I think
always.
I think it's sometimes really challenging from transitioning from rapport building and listening and
Mhm.
kind of the groundwork that you're laying to actually get into the like actual sales
Mhm.
process of talking numbers and negotiating.
Well,
A
but
lot
even
of
before that, I would be doing other things before that,
yeah,
right? So when we're talking about the pain and like what's going on and why you need to sell, okay, well, I need to be able to pay off my mortgage. I need to be able to have, $3,000 for moving. I need 20,000 to pay off my credit card debt, and I need all these other things.
yeah,
We just itemize it. Okay, well, Stephanie, it sounds to me, like to be able to take care of the some credit card debt, getting a new car, moving into an apartment, and a few of these other things that you want to take care of. I mean, how much do you think you need to get out take care of all of that?
yeah,
And he's like, well, if I got like 45,000 from all that, that'd be good. Okay, so if I could put $45,000 in your pocket, what would happen next? And so I'm focused on net, always focused on net. I don't want to talk about the price of the home because we're talking about the price of the home. I'm getting anchored by Redfin, Zillow, Realtor, Sold Comps. My brother-in-law said my house is worth X. I don't want to play this game. I want to focus on net. And so I want to say, I'm going to start off always with how much are you hoping to walk away with, or how much do you need to take care of these scenarios, right? And you can only do that if you ask all the right questions in the pain step. If I figured out what is going on in your world, why you need to sell, what is going on, why the urgency, what has to happen for you to feel like everything's taken care of. And once I understand all these things, I now have the permission to ask you how much you need to take care of all these problems.
yeah.
And that's where my offer is going to come in. And that's how we're able to pay quite a bit lower. Like, I've never said we were the biggest, right, in Phoenix. I've never made that claim. But I believe very strongly we always had the biggest margins because our offer always was lower than everybody else's because we didn't make an offer on the value of the home. We focus on how much they need to walk away with.
Yeah, and yeah, the value that you're providing.
Mhm.
Uh, so I'm grateful for you coming on and talking through this because I think to get to the what the best operators are doing now and the people that are the most successful, I think they have two really core tenets that they do very well,
Mhm.
and that is that they have a sales process, like
Yeah.
period, that there is a sales process, there is a repeatable steps and strategies that they're using on these appointments with homeowners, right? So that they can establish a rapport and the connection in a reliable way. And part of the sales process too, they have a disposition process, right? Like
Yeah.
that core tenet is there, which means that they have different options of disposing properties, especially now with wholesaling being a little bit disrupted depending on the state that you're in and how you're going about dispositioning a deal.
Mhm.
Uh, the operators that are super successful right now have this big piece of the pie. And then the second part that I'm seeing is operations. Obviously, having tight operations. What does that mean? That means that these companies know their pipeline. and their pipeline math, how much they need of X to equal Y. That is critically important, I think, to succeed, especially when times are a little bit bumpy.
Mhm.
Knowing what your numbers are and how to manipulate them and where your opportunities are in your funnel, and forecasting. I think this has
Yeah.
been even more important, especially in the last 18 months. But do you know your financials? And can you forecast what you're going to bring in this quarter, this year,
Mhm.
and what the changes are in your pipeline math that affect your forecasting? I see a lot more discussion out there around financials and your own financial literacy. Um, and I think when times get difficult or deals get smaller or a little bit more scarce, people don't want to look at the numbers.
Mhm.
They're like, "Oh, I'm just going to work really hard. I'm not going to look at my numbers. I'm
I
just
mean,
going to
that sounds like the first half of my career, if not more, if not longer.
right? Don't we all kind of have this transition point, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like I'm just going to hustle really hard and I'm just going to I'm gonna throw some spaghetti on the wall and it's going to work out okay.
Mhm.
But those, yeah, Chris just said cash conversion cycle. It is critical to understand those things. Otherwise, you're
Mhm.
flying blind and you're also flying scared.
Yeah.
When I kind of made that same transition in our real estate career to understanding pipeline math, understanding my operations, understanding the financials, now I felt better about the market conditions. I felt better about what I
Well,
was in control over.
I could say where it made the biggest difference for me once I got better at my numbers was confidence in my decisions,
Exactly.
right? I'm going to do this and I can do it
Yeah.
versus like, should we do this? Do we have the money for it? What happens if it doesn't work? Right? Like you're not able to take certain steps. You're taking steps that are kind of like, um, soft steps, just it's non-committed steps. And so if you're not sure it's going to work, it might not work. But you're like, here's what we're going to do, and here's what's going to happen. And you could be wrong. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. But if you're not, if you don't know your numbers and you're playing scared, man, it is tough to run a business playing scared.
Basically you can't. And it's just like, trying to get a sale when you need a sale. People can
Yeah.
sense that, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
No matter how good you are or professional you are, if you need it, there's this subliminal awareness that everybody
You're
has.
giving off that energy.
You know what I mean? Yeah, commission breath, right?
Mhm.
So I think knowing and being confident will changes that, just changes that whole
Yeah,
picture. Yeah.
absolutely. So I think that's key. I mean, you look at like marketing when you first start is really difficult, and afterwards is actually really easy. It's actually the easiest part of your business. But initially, it's like, how do I get a seller, right? So then after that, it's sales, and sales is something you continue to get better at. And then there's operations, right? Which is the ones that are still alive have good operations,
Right.
right? Like I would be terrified if I had to go to York, Pennsylvania today to compete against Eric Brewer, right? Like his operations is dialed in. If I had to go to Charlotte and compete against Stephanie, I'm not excited about that, right? Your operations are dialed in. It's like the way I've described it in the past, like if I wanted to go play against the Yankees or like the Patriots, is like it's gonna be pretty hard to just like start a team from scratch and compete against an organization like that. And then finance is like the last frontier, which is like it requires massive discipline. So most people don't do it because it's so uncomfortable, especially the type of people we attract in this industry, myself especially, non-compliant people, not detail-oriented people. Looking at your QuickBooks just gives you hives, right?
Yeah.
And so that's who we attract in this industry. Again, I'm not judging it because that's who I am. I mean, I was I remember how many times I was like, I'll do the books this weekend. I'll do the books this weekend. And I remember the longest stretch I had was like 9 months. From like, I'll do the books this weekend, like 9 months of putting it
Yeah.
off. That's just who we are. And then as far as like the strategies, we had Devin here, I think a few months ago with the installment method. I am seeing the guys that have embraced that are just cleaning up. Like there's such a competitive advantage right now because they jumped on it earlier. But let's go ahead and go to these guys' questions.
Yeah. Looks like Steve has some questions about marketing strategies. I'd have a lot of opinions on this. What's working for you right now?
Well, I want to be totally transparent. So I stopped marketing for houses in February, right? So I'm buying my last property next week. And the only reason I'm buying it next week is because the seller is freaking crazy and just kept delaying and delaying and delaying. I literally contracted it July of last year,
Oh
right?
man.
Yeah, so we're literally closing next week. But it's the last one I'm buying. So I stopped marketing in February. But I can tell you, right, in conversations I have, guys are doing amazing. A lot of guys are doing PPC really, really well. A lot of guys are just crushing it with PPC. The guys that are doing direct mail are doing really well as well because
Direct
a,
mail.
a lot of people stopped doing direct mail. So
Yep.
there was a cycle where like direct mail was doing well, and then texting came along and
Yep.
killed direct mail, right? But now texting's mostly gone away, so direct mail is doing great again. So I would say the things I'm hearing the most, PPC, direct mail. I still know a lot of guys doing really well on TV, but it doesn't sound like it's the competitive advantage it was maybe 2-3 years ago. So yeah, I would say far and away probably is PPC.
So I think PPL is kind of dying, right? I think most people, myself included, here in Charlotte, have found that a lot of PPL providers are providing less and less quality leads, getting very,
That's the
very,
business model. It's tough.
yeah, it's tough, tough, and it's crazy because it's nice to be able to buy the lead and not the click, and then be able to potentially dispute it if it's a listed property or whatever.
Mm.
But we've noticed a big trend in quality issues with PPL, and so folks have been transitioning to PPC, which I agree with wholeheartedly, especially with a lot of this 10 DLC where you have to kind of own your own opt-in, and can
Hmm.
spam laws kind of, you need to get the opt-in yourself. You can't necessarily pay for that opt-in and it count.
Right. Hmm.
So PPC for sure. But I think the dark horse is direct mail. I 100% agree. And I think it's probably similar to the installment method and those dispo strategies where you get in the chain of title.
Hmm.
People who have the ability to get in the chain of title, either by buying it themselves and then wholetailing, etc., or chain of title and then owner financing, things like that. Huge win. Just like if you have some capital and some resources to put towards direct mail, it used to be super, super expensive, so no one did it. It is a little
Hmm.
bit more expensive depending on your market, but if you can do it, your response rate is higher and the quality is there. So personally, we do a lot of check letters and niche mailing to these kind of stacked lists and things. And we do, what we're super successful with is direct mail to our database. That it like and it took me too many years to figure that out, and I'm kind of
Hmm.
embarrassed to say it, but somebody who opted in on the website or PPC or called up a TV ad or what have you that didn't convert, they're just sitting in my system in like this follow-up sequence. We just keep texting and calling them, like they don't pick up or they don't respond. When we mail them a check letter, they respond to the tune of like a 10% response rate. It's
That's
wild.
incredible.
But like, duh, right? Like we bought this list of vacant homes, or like maybe they want to sell. These people have already opted in, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like, but then it's like, why didn't I think of this sooner? So the nice thing is, the longer that you're in business, the better database that you have,
Hmm.
and we can leverage that with other channels besides just calling them. Making sure that they're texting, making sure that you're mailing them. That's huge. And the check letter, I open them, right? I'm like, just in case this looks like BS, but like, open it just in case, because what if I'm
Yeah.
wrong? So that those work really well for follow up. But I think direct mail is going to continue to be strong. I've
I mean,
also,
it's always worked, especially you look at our avatar.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I've also heard good things about radio. I don't personally do radio ads. Have you heard the
Mm-hmm.
same?
I've heard some people having success with radio, but I haven't heard anyone screaming from the mountaintops about radio. Right? The people that are bragging to me, PPC and
On
direct mail, like,
radio.
right? They're like, I'm crushing it. It's like, oh, what are you doing? PPC. It's like, okay, good to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's interesting. Maybe it's one of those things that helps other channels too, right? That omnipresence.
Mm-hmm.
We
Could
tried
be.
iHeartRadio a few years ago and didn't get much out of it, but I think FM radio has some potential too, and it's not very expensive.
No, it's not. And then Robbie's asking about if I were building dispositions department from scratch, where would I start? I would find people that are friendly, because dispo is a very, very relationship heavy business.
Yeah.
Right? Like you gotta care about the people. The perfect avatar I've described in our trainings in the past is Jamil Damji. You guys might know him as the Blue Genie. You might see him from his commercials for Astro Club. You might see him on A&E TV. But he was one of my first mentors when I got into this business. And how was he my mentor? I get a property, I get a lead. I was like, Jamil, what can you move this property for? Where do I need to be at? Right. I said, you need to be at this price. I can move it at this price. Okay, great. Right. And then I lock it up at that price and we split the deal 50-50. Why were we able to do that? Because he was friends with all the buyers. That's the
Yeah.
way it worked. And so if I was starting from scratch, I would hire a person that is determined, social, cares about other humans, right? Which is not me, right? So do not hire me for the dispo department.
Nothing to say.
Listen, I was a terrible realtor because I would
Like
never call you.
wait, like, you prefer cats?
No, I'm just never going to call you and ask you how you're doing, how your kids are. Like, I'm just not going to do that, right? Like, I'm out of sight, out of mind. So, like, even though I was a very, very successful realtor, it was not because of my personality. It was because I was really good at marketing, right? And so you want to find someone that likes to hang out with people, that enjoys small talk. That's who, if I was starting from scratch, I would do that. And then I would have probably a different person constantly pulling lists, right? Scraping the MLS for all the cash buyers, whether you're using an investor lift, buyer sonar, privy, whatever, where you can find all the other buyers. So I would have one person gathering the data, one person building relationships. That's what I would do if I was starting from scratch.
If I was starting from scratch, I would go to the auction house and make friends with the people bidding on auctions still.
Mhm.
Those people, by the way, generally will talk to you in person if they're there because you're standing around waiting for
Yeah.
stuff to happen, and they're relatively easy to talk to.
Mhm.
We did that in the beginning, just trying to meet people before I even really knew about RIAs. I went to, and I see here that Chris mentioned RIAs too. I think RIAs are a great place to meet people too, but don't just do that because I noticed there's a lot of people who are like trying to get into it and a lot of analysis paralysis in RIAs. But
Mhm.
auction, these people are bidding on houses sight unseen,
Right.
you know,
Do you still
and
have that gal on your dispo team?
Noelle, absolutely, yep,
Yeah. She's an absolute monster, right?
yeah,
She's friends with everybody.
yep.
That's the way to
Super,
do it.
super friendly, talk to anybody. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, we want an extrovert in this seat. I want an introvert, probably more. Not. I don't want an introvert. I don't want. What I don't want is a big extrovert in the acquisition side, because I'm going to talk over the homeowner, right? I want someone in the middle, or maybe a little introverted on the acquisition side. But dispo, I want everyone to know who you are.
Yeah. We did what do we call it? Cocktails and contracts.
Okay.
And we did like a little RIA event like that, and we did it monthly for a really long time. And really, COVID was what kind of disrupted that cycle because we had to stop doing it when COVID hit.
Mhm.
But should do that again because that was really great. We met a lot of local people that way, and people came out to hang out. And even though it was kind of a low pressure type situation, we met a lot of great folks that way, and we still have great relationships with people because of those events that we did. So I would
Yeah,
say
we had.
don't underestimate making an event of your own. You know,
Yeah, before COVID, I had an event too, and we had a lot of people come. Right, we did it monthly, and I think
yeah,
not in March because that's when everyone got scared, but in February, I think we had like 140 people come.
yeah,
Right, and you can have a title company sponsor it, you can have a data company
yeah.
sponsor it, whatever.
Lenders will sponsor those
Yeah,
events too.
hard money lenders. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's who I had splitting it. I had Batch, hard money lender, and my title company. Let's split it. So I never paid anything out of pocket. Didn't matter how much it was. Didn't have to pay anything out of pocket. And I never tried to turn it into a profit center, but if I wanted to, I could have.
yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, if you just cover your costs for, an open bar or something like that, or some appetizers, you're gonna make a nice profit on one buyer. It's gonna cover it for the whole year.
Exactly.
So open bar isn't too expensive too, a couple $1,000 maybe. So get someone to partner with you on that is
Yeah, we
incredible.
provided one drink ticket and we
Yeah,
never exceeded 2K.
yeah, yeah. And I was just pleasantly surprised how many people will show up for something different.
Mhm.
Uh, Especially because you'd be surprised how many people notice what you're doing.
Right.
And when you have an event, people are curious, they'll show up to at least one or two. So
And it gives you a lot of implied authority.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
Yep.
then you get a chance to show some deals too while you're there. Hopefully you have a couple that are ready to
Hopefully.
talk about. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So does not look like we have any other questions. Like I said, if you guys are interested, what I have to offer, right? Text script to 33777. I think that the value we're giving there should hopefully blow your mind. Oh, and we also have a KPI tracker, a personalized KPI tracker. Which what I mean by that is if you know what your lead to contact rate is, or if you want to start all at the bottom, unqualified lead to qualified lead to contact to appointment to contract to close. If you know all these metrics and you know what your average wholesale fee is, and you plug those all in there and you say, here's how much money I want to make, it will tell you exactly how many appointments you need to have a day to get this many contracts, or how many conversations per day to get this many appointments per week, to get this many contracts per month, to make this much per year. And it's all auto-populated, right? So you just put it in every day, and it's all tracked, and it'll update for you in real time, like what your numbers need to be to hit your goals.
This sounds familiar. Like I may have said the same thing.
Yeah. Have you?
Did you rip off my calculator, Steve Trang?
No, I made it from scratch, but it probably would have been smarter to copy and paste. But no, I made it from scratch. I'm a former engineer, so I'm a spreadsheet nerd.
So you like spreadsheets? It just sounds real familiar.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. So they can get that too if they text that number.
Yeah, that's all included.
That's awesome. That's
Yep.
awesome. Well, good. I mean, it sounds like we don't have any more questions. We're right about at time. So this is good. Look at us. We're super professional. We're in on under the mark. Thank you so much for coming on and hanging out and chatting. I think hopefully everyone got that the takeaway from here is you've got to have a sales process, and it is completely able to be systematized, and there's ways to do it, and most of it is listening. Sounds like there's some applications in marriage and parenting, so this is good. Like
leading an organization.
Yeah, and operations. Know your pipeline math, everyone. That's really, really critical.
Yeah, that's what the top people are doing.
That's right. That's right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'll see you
Thank
in a
you.
couple weeks, I think, right? In San Diego?
No, not in a couple weeks. I only can only leave so many times, and family mastermind is the week after.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. I wish if it were up to me, I would be at every mastermind, but I'm not the decision maker.
Yeah. Well, there's only so much time. Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to see you. Thank you so much. Hope everyone got some value out of that. Everyone have a great weekend.
All right. Bye.